Hi everyone, welcome to Consensus 2022. We are live here in Austin, Texas. I'm here with Charles Hoskinson. He's the co-founder of Ethereum and the founder of the Cardano blockchain. Charles, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Of course. Are you having a good conference?
It's been pretty tiring. It's a lot of people. We had a huge community event. Over 1,200 people attended in the sweltering Austin heat of 100 degrees. So that was fun. And the conference so far is pretty amazing. There's a lot of great guests here. Senator Lummis is here. Kimball Musk is here. And I think they have over 10,000 people. It's going to be a madhouse, but they always are. Enthusiasm and excitement's at an all-time high, and a lot of great projects building.
Mm-hmm. So I do want to start off, I want to talk about Ethereum a little bit. There's been news in the last couple of days. They had a dress rehearsal for their launch on the proof of stake yesterday. Mm-hmm. It's been a move that they've been working towards for quite some time. But they're trying to get into smart contracts. Cardano is the pro at smart contracts. Surely they're just playing catch up with you guys at this point.
Well, that's very kind to say. I always view it as an apples to oranges type of a situation. Ethereum 2, or whatever they're calling it these days, is like changing the tires on a car while it's driving. It was designed as a proof of work system, and they didn't have the requisite plumbing to make an easy transition from proof of work to proof of stake. And there's a lot of things in that infrastructure that have to work very well. It's a multi-client environment, so the clients have to work together. There's tons of exchanges that support it and have to upgrade. They have to fire all the miners. It's not easy to do that in a $200 billion ecosystem. On the smart contract side, I think there is a better set of comparables in that we had the luxury of hindsight. We were able to look at how the Ethereum ecosystem built out, what types of problems people were having with smart contracts, from the accounting model to how to achieve concurrency, to how to use formal verification, these types of things. And we had about 4 years to build out the extended UTXO and Plutus model. And I think in the long term, it's a superior model because it scales much better and it's much easier to verify that things work well. So you can apply the same standards that people use for aircrafts, the same standards people use for life science software like pacemakers and these things, to make sure that the software runs correctly. And the marketplace will ultimately decide what they like more. The good part of Ethereum is that it's kind of a giant aggregation point of a lot of really bright people and a lot of great dialogue. So it led to the rise of the DAO movement, it led to the rise of the ICO revolution, and in many ways a lot of the cool things that we in this industry know, love, and treasure. So it almost reminds me of Frank Lloyd Wright. He was a very tough boss to work for. And so he would give new architects who'd come on board the impossible house to design. He'd give all these weird requirements. And they would spend weeks and weeks and weeks writing up the blueprints, and eventually they'd show them proudly and say, "We figured it out." And then he'd look at it and say, "Oh, that looks great." And then he'd burn them right in front of them. And then they're like, "Oh my God, I've worked weeks on this." And he says, "Well, now that we know it can be done, let's decide how we want to do it." And that's really the difference between Ethereum and Cardano. Ethereum is the first set of blueprints. It's a second generation. And it really has given the entire industry a great set of business and design requirements. And we've had the luxury to be able to stand on those shoulders and build better. And Ethereum itself is trying to stand on its own shoulders and build better. And we wish him well. If I was Vitalik, I would have just embraced Polkadot and made that Ethereum 1.5. It's a much better, easier path to get to what they want, but they decided to go for everything, sharding and all these other things, and it's going to be very challenging.
Do you feel a little bit responsible for that success, as you were a co-founder in the beginning?
I wasn't there that long. I was only there for 6 months, and people love making it bigger than it is. I've been working on Cardano since 2015. We've written 140 papers, 1 million lines of code. We have 3.5 million people in the community. Been to 72 countries in the last 7 years. And so that is what I hope defines me in the time that I've spent, not the rivalries of the past or brief stints here and there. I do take a little bit of credit for the creation of Crypto Valley, because I was the guy who made the decision that Ethereum launched from Switzerland. And for better or worse, it's led to a lot of money and a lot of companies being established in Switzerland that are in the cryptocurrency space. And also there were some design things here and there, like if you like SHA-3, well, that was me. So there's a few things there, but not a lot, because I wasn't there long enough to leave a great legacy. But I certainly did learn a lot from what they've done, and Cardano is a great reflection of that.
Mm-hmm. It's a great community space, I feel like. Yeah. Everybody kind of learns from each other, and they build on top of what others have built, and nobody takes too much credit for one thing. So yeah. I like that about this space. Everyone's very community driven. Just to stick on Ethereum for a little longer, do you worry that it kind of seems that the SEC has given Ethereum a green light when they're going after tokens like XRP, now Binance as well, library token? Does it worry you that Cardano hasn't been given the green light by the SEC? Yet.
Regulation through enforcement is the worst possible thing to do. You have this monster of the week scenario of, well, who are they going after next? And there's material facts and circumstances aren't too different between a lot of these projects. What needs to happen is the legislative branch needs to step up and lead. They need to pass a law, and they need comprehensive crypto reform, and we need to focus on basic definitions. So we need to look at things like, what is the definition of decentralization? Everybody says they're decentralized, but there's 10,000 projects, and everybody's a little different in terms of who's in charge and how things work. We need a consumer protection bill of rights, a crypto user's bill of rights to define what rights you have, what rights that you don't have if you use a cryptocurrency, these types of things. And I think that helps create the clarity that we need to move forward. I mean, you can't have a situation where if a political administration changes, the entire regulatory regime changes. That's why countries in the developing world never get direct foreign investment. Because people are always worried, well, if the guy at the top goes crazy or gets replaced, every contract we have, every deal we have, every understanding we have commercially ends. I mean, look at Venezuela, pre-Chavez, post-Chavez. Pre-Chavez, a super wealthy nation, great place to be an oil producer. Post nationalizes the whole business. So one person can make a dramatic difference if you rule by executive fiat or you regulate through occasional enforcement here and there, either aggressively or in a laissez-faire way. So the industry needs to change. Now, do I worry? No, not really. I mean, Cardano is a completely decentralized ecosystem. There's, as I mentioned, over 3 million people. There's 15 plus firms that work on core development. It's on the basis of peer-reviewed research, which is intrinsically decentralized. I mean, you look at these other projects, they have these heroic efforts of small teams of highly hyped scientists. Here, it's like faceless. There's graduate students, postdocs, professors all around the world. So if that doesn't meet the definition of sufficiently decentralized, oh, by the way, over 3,000 stake pools, less than 10 mining pools control Bitcoin, then I don't know what does. And it would be a catastrophe for the industry to go down those roads. But it's any given Sunday right now. This is a difficult regime to deal with, and we're just working our way through it as an industry. Hopefully, though, the better angels of our nature will prevail, and we have things like the Financial Innovation Act, HR 7614, and also the Biden executive order does seem to be a bit more reasonable about things. And so I think they're going to kind of collide together, and in 2023, it's very likely we'll see some reform that will add clarity that we need in the industry.
The point you made before about not having to overhaul everything with an administration, right? Something that Rostin Bannon, the CFTC chair, brought up at a panel yesterday. He said we don't have to reinvent the wheel in Washington in order to regulate crypto. We should implement the infrastructure we already have, improve it, work with the technology that's evolving. Do you agree with that? Because a lot of people say they should probably create a new agency to kind of deal with this, but do you think we need that? What do you say to the chairman?
Well, when's the last time a government agency's ever been shut down after we create it? I remember when the 9/11 report came out, and they said, "Hey, we have this problem of too much fragmentation and too many agencies in the intelligence community. We need to consolidate a little bit." So their solution was to create another agency, the Director of National Intelligence, to link all the agencies together. And I think they've created 2 more since then. So the government has a real big habit of creating things but never finishing anything and never shutting anything down. And there's no signal with the government to provide a regulating mechanism when they don't do their job. So within the CFTC is somewhat decentralized in that commodities are decentralized. Who's in charge of gold? Who's in charge of oil? There's local power groups here and there. But a commodity is not issued, it's found, it's grown, it's created. So it does feel that regulation that's made for an intrinsically decentralized asset probably is better than regulation that's made for an issuer, a highly centralized asset. The challenge is not whether it's a security or a commodity. The challenge is we don't have good tests and mechanisms to be able to flow between the two. So Ethereum is going through a major upgrade. does the fact that it's going from proof of work to proof of stake change the facts and circumstances? And should the analysis be revised of whether it's a commodity or a security? And under what set of tests and basis would permit that? We just don't have that at the moment. So that's what we really need to focus on, is we need to take a step back and we need to figure out these foundational tests, these foundational concerns, and then once we have it, it's going to be very easy to kind of place things in the right buckets. Now, even if you're a commodity, there's still regulation, market manipulation, insider trading, all these things can still apply, just like they do with oil, just like they do with gold, and plenty of people have gone to jail for trying to manipulate the commodities market or being dishonest or committing Ponzi schemes or these types of things, especially in the oil and gas business on the E&P side for small scale wells. So you have a lot of tools in the tool bag, but what's not tenable is just to say everything is a security by default until proven otherwise, because how do you even manage that? Like, who would file for Bitcoin as a thought experiment? Who would even, let's say you're a Bitcoin maximalist and you hate Ethereum, oh, it's a security. Okay, who files for Ethereum? What if the Ethereum Foundation goes out of business? What does it just pack up? Is Ethereum going to disappear? No. And it's the same for Cardano. Cardano is a huge decentralized ecosystem. It's run by the community. If I was getting a plane crash tomorrow, it wouldn't materially change the facts and circumstances of Cardano. It's here to stay. So to say, well, that's a security and this arbitrary person over there should have an unlimited liability to file. And also, what are the information asymmetries? So who knows more information than other people? It's absurd. So things really do need to be carefully thought about. And I do believe the CFTC is well equipped to regulate big chunks of this, but I still do believe you need consumer financial protections in place, and I still believe that you need to have industry-wide standards for quality in place. There's $10.5 billion worth of hacks in DeFi last year. That's not acceptable. That's not tenable. You can't have a cryptocurrency collapse and cost as much money as the Bernie Madoff scandal and expect that this industry can completely run through laissez-faire and everything's hokey-dory. But the final point is that I think there's a big opportunity here that's being missed in the conversation, and hopefully we can address that, which is algorithmic regulation as possible. We have technology to embed within a transaction metadata, identity, contingent settlement, other things that can allow you to build beautiful private transactional frameworks that have consumer protections built into them. So if we lead and we innovate, we can actually not only get better regulation, but we can get more agile and more cost-effective regulation that scales down beautifully. So you don't have to hire 25 lawyers and play mind games of who's in charge and what's this. The settlement is compliance or these types of things. And I think we can move towards a world like that.
I want to stay on regulation just to talk about the Lummis-Gillibrand bill that came out a couple of days ago. Everybody here is talking about it. Do you think this is a good first step to kind of getting some kind of responsible regulation in the works? They talked about giving oversight of securities tokens to the SEC, commodities to the CFTC, but I heard Lummis say that the market cap of tokens is probably going to go to the CFTC. So kind of everybody is excited about that. It's like, oh, well, it's not a security, then maybe we have some hope here. So do you think that is a good step towards some kind of formal regulation?
Well, I like some parts of it. First off, I like the fact that Senator Lummis and Gillibrand are very willing to engage and work with the cryptocurrency industry. They reached out to us back in December, and there's probably 14 revisions of the bill or so forth since December. So they've been working incredibly hard and diligently. And it wasn't just us. They reached out to dozens of actors throughout the industry and got tons of advice, tons of deep conversations. And that's the hallmark of a good legislative process, an intrinsically inclusive process. The other thing is it's bipartisan. Democrats and Republicans really hate each other right now. And yet somehow they're able to come together on this. And so this is a nonpartisan issue. We really need to get it done. So those are good parts. There are certain things like these auxiliary assets and what's a security, what's not, disclosures. And I think there's a lot of fine tuning that needs to be done in the bill because cryptocurrencies are like financial stem cells. They can wake up on Tuesday and be a currency and wake up on Wednesday and be a commodity, and on the weekend take it off and go be a loyalty point or something like that. And so when you have an asset that has that kind of diversity about it, it's a mistake to try to pigeonhole it into one category or another category, because it's fluid based upon facts and circumstances and use and technological upgrades. So things can happen that make the system more centralized, and things can happen make the system more decentralized. And events can occur that can create market failures or information asymmetries that need to be examined. So what matters much more, in my view, are foundational tests and definitions, and then things that you can measure explicitly. And then you can kind of look as the technology evolves and make a judgment on a case-by-case basis of whether things have changed. But I think it's a very positive step in the right direction. The Biden executive order, I think, is also going to bring out a lot of requirements from the executive branch. Whether they're good or bad, at least it'll allow people to know where that administration stands. And then I think after the midterm elections, what's going to happen is these two things are going to kind of collide into each other. Mm-hmm. And then it'll give us a viable path forward for passing something. I don't think the politics of today are possible to pass something this year. The Lummis bill would have to go through 4 different committees. It's election year, it's very volatile, very political, and frankly, they're just not going to do something that big and that controversial during this time period.
I remember you told me back in May you probably wouldn't expect any major movement until at least 2025.
Yeah, I believe that could be the case because there's a chance where the Biden executive order is running contrary to what the Senate wants to do. And if a red wave happens, which is very likely this November, then you'll have a situation where the House and Senate pass something, but the president vetoes it, and they don't have quite enough of a majority to override a presidential veto. So somehow the Biden administration is going to have to get along with people that they don't get along with and agree to do some dramatic changes to something, which requires political courage, which is something that's been very lacking in Washington for a while. Whenever you have to hope for the better angels of nature to prevail and political courage to prevail in this type of environment, you're probably going to be very disappointed and let down. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's going to be a tough road, but if we as an industry get very vocal and work very closely, I do think we can find enough points of intersection where we can force an outcome in 2023 that's good for everybody. If not, unfortunately, we're going to be in a terrible environment until the administration changes, and we could have to wait until 2025.
Mm-hmm. Let's switch gears a little bit. I want to talk about the so-called crypto winter. Are we still in one? I remember you told me on your Spaces call back in May, right after the Luna crash, that you see possibly the price of Bitcoin going as low as 15,000 this time around. Yeah. Do you still think that? Are we kind of out of the woods, so to speak?
Well, I mean, what's nice about the Bitcoin is that it tends not to fall below its all-time high from prior bull runs. And so, it went from 20,000 to 4,000, but then when it went up to 64,000, it has yet to fall back to 20,000, these types of things. And so it could fall considerably and cut in half. But long term, I think the prospects are quite good. But you have to understand the relationship between the bears and the bulls. The bull market is a time for mass acquisition of people, brings many new people in. So this last bull market brought in the artists and the celebrities and the musicians because of the NFT revolution. Mm-hmm. And there was just this humongous wave of adoption and enthusiasm that I've never seen before. And some of it was quite positive, and some of it was a little strange. It's like the past is the future again. So you have Moses come down with the tablets and he sees the golden bull, and then you go to Bitcoin Miami in 2022 and they literally have a golden bull outside. You're like, okay, I guess we're doing this again. So you see a little bit of that. But the bear market is actually much nicer for us as builders because people are much more collaborative. They tend not to be looking for a land grab, the poaching disappears, and you get to the business of building, and people really focus on technology. So the last bear market set up the bull market of 2021, and there was 2 years of building to get to that. So whether this lasts 6 months or 2 years, it doesn't really matter. People are sufficiently capitalized that great things can be done, and I'm really looking forward to the next wave because we have things like quantum resistance coming, recursive snarks coming, and dozens of other foundational technologies that will make crypto much better, much more secure, and ultimately much more useful to a lot of people. So the next wave, probably you'll see 1 billion people around the world using it. So this is really our opportunity to put our nose to the grindstone, collaborate, work as an industry, and hopefully get a lot of housekeeping done from standards and interoperability. We kind of need our Wi-Fi moment, our Bluetooth moment to get everything to work together, and also legislatively to get laws passed that help solidify the industry and standardize and protect people for the next bull run that comes, whenever that is.
Got it. So I want to plug you first a little bit. You have a big announcement today. The Light Wallet is coming out, Lace. Tell me a little bit about Lace. I know it's a little bit, it's catered towards not, such a bro atmosphere. I know like wallets are traditionally kind of like bro-y, male-oriented, but you kind of want to make it a little more, female adopted, as well. So
yeah, it was named after Ada Lovelace.
Ada Lovelace, right? That's what Ada was named
Yeah.
after originally, and then Lace is the new light wallet.
Yeah. Well, we love trying to think about how do you build a great consumer experience, and there's a lot of things that need to be pulled together. So a wallet is kind of misnomer in that cryptocurrency wallets are usually only there to store assets and transact assets. But when you look at cryptocurrency in 2022, you have identity, you have DApp interactions, you have rich metadata, you have tax compliance, you have so much going on. You have collectibles inside these wallets now. So what we wanted to do was build a very beautiful consumer-friendly platform that evolves very quickly. So every 6 to 9 weeks, new features and functionality come out, and it gives you kind of a Swiss Army knife of cryptography. So you can do a lot of very complicated things over time, like multi-sig transactions and partial delegation of proxy keys. But ultimately, you can go multi-chain, multi-asset, and it's a place to store your digital life in that respect, this new digital life that you're getting. So it's a place where you can interact with people, a place where you can have an identity that you can share, multiple identities, one for your GameFi, one for compliance, one for friends, NFTs, all these types of things. And it's also a place that you can start consolidating and getting a common view of the DApp space. So dApps are very fragmented right now, and people usually have to go to a website, and there's a poor user experience of interacting with them, lots of clicking, lots of different windows, all this stuff. It'd be much better if you had just a beautiful dApp store, and you could just click, one-click install, you have it, it's there, and it works.
It's very seamless.
Exactly. And so get it to work in the browser, get it to work on a phone, get it to work on a desktops, and make it fast and beautiful. The other thing is that we have such great relationships. Like we have a great relationship with Carnegie Mellon University, and we've been working with them for a while, and they have one of the best human-computer interaction groups in the world there at CMU. So we have all these user experience and user interface problems with the use of cryptocurrency. You got to remember 24 keywords, you got to do all this stuff, and very easy to lose your money, lose your keys. It'd be very cool to be able to collaborate with them on projects of could we do better? Maybe your restoration could be a picture instead of keywords or these types of things. And so it's really nice to have a platform where not only can we make technological innovations and integration innovations and kind of bring everybody together and unify it, but also user experience and user interface innovations to ultimately make using cryptocurrencies easier for people. Because if you want to go from 10 million to 1 billion people, that delta is usability, not functionality. Usually your functionality is great at 10 million, but it's the best kept secret. The billion is only when you have great usability in that respect. So we're really excited about it. There's a lot of passion and love. Alex Appledorn's the product lead there, and he and his team have been working incredibly diligently over time in many cases, and it's made with a lot of love and passion. I go back to my Italian roots. You have to make things with love.
Passion. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's when the best products are made, I believe. Last question. Where do you see the Ripple case going?
That's an interesting one. It's anybody's guess. I mean, they're certainly beating up on the SEC and the discovery disclosure part. And it's going to go on and on and on, and it's unlikely at this juncture that there's going to be a settlement. So we'll see what happens. But it goes back to that statement of regulation through enforcement is a very bad precedent. Enforcement should be when it's clear that people have committed fraud or there's material misconduct. It shouldn't be to establish the rules. It's just like legislating through the bench, through the judiciary. You're happy until your team loses, and that is the biggest crisis of all time. When you look at a lot of historic, massive rulings from the Supreme Court, unless they're 9-0 and there's legislative backup for it, they tend not to be durable in the long term. They tend to get overturned. In some cases, that's a very good thing, like Plessy versus Ferguson with Brown v. Board of Education. In other cases, not so much. So it's very important that we remove the judiciary from inventing new laws and regulations and procedures. And unfortunately, we might end up with a Ripple test because of this enforcement. Could go all the way to the Supreme Court. Who knows? And it's not a good precedent. So I hope that we can get good legislation out, and I hope that the industry as a whole can move beyond this of what's going to happen here, or lately with Binance, I guess they're having some problems. That's just not a way to do anything. It's hurting job creation, it's hurting the United States. I mean, Solidity developers are making $250,000, $500,000. They're not going to be hired here in the United States. They're going to go to Singapore, to Switzerland, to Liechtenstein, to other places. It's hurting our competitiveness. A lot of this technology is not just about financial innovation. It's about healthcare innovation. It's about identity infrastructure innovation, election reform for being able to verify your vote, infrastructure security. We talk about China and Russia attacking us with cyber attacks. Well, what's going to get us out of that and protect our infrastructure and make sure that it's stronger against these types of things? Blockchain technology. So what are we going to do? Drive all the people that know how to build this stuff into Europe and into Asia and then go and hire them for 10 times the price to go rebuild all of our infrastructure? That's nuts. So the only way you get out of that is by getting good clarity. And you don't get clarity by the monster of the week. You get clarity by good legislative action and clarity by good principles and clarity by a cooperative environment. You know, when I started Ethereum with Vitalik and the rest of the gang, Switzerland was great from one perspective. We could talk to them. And it was not at times the friendliest conversation, but I never felt that the Swiss government didn't represent the Swiss people. There was always the question of, well, what are you doing for Switzerland? What jobs are you creating? What value are you bringing in? But it was fast. Within a few weeks, we got a tax ruling from the Canton of Zug, and it was over, and that was the law of the land. We had regulatory certainty, and we moved on. And I remember the mayor of Zug, he said, "Welcome to Switzerland, don't make it our problem." You know, great guy. But you know, I understood what he was saying, and we made the argument that it would create an industry, and it did. Billions of dollars entered Switzerland, more than 30 plus foundations were formed, and there's a big cadre of people now floating around that country, for better or for worse. Well, that's an example of a positive relationship. We need to get to regulation that way, where if you're a young entrepreneur and you want to go do something, there's innovation groups within the government. You can go and talk to them, brainstorm with them, and get to a point where both sides feel pretty comfortable. And after you do that, go hire a lawyer to paper all of it, get it done, get a ruling, and it's over, and it's a few weeks. We can't have a situation where you have to go hire a really expensive law firm like a Perkins Coie or Wilson Sonsini and spend $500,000 to get to a maybe, and then you have no certainty, and then 2 years later you get sued by a regulator or something like that. Or if you talk to a regulator, everything you talk about is used against you immediately afterwards.
Just quickly, then what's the disconnect then between, say, the United States and Switzerland? Why is it such a difficult path for entrepreneurs to talk to their elected officials, to talk to the people who represent them?
Because in the United States, regulation is seldom used as a tool to protect consumers or enable business. It's used as a tool to inhibit competition, especially in the financial services industry. This is a pervasive, long-standing problem. The financial industry is the most regulated industry in the world, probably more regulated than even healthcare, where your life is at stake. Yet somehow we still have massive banks collapse, somehow we still have Ponzi schemes, somehow we have all these problems. It's clearly not working. But you notice something, that the more regulation we get, the larger the financial institutions get. In 2008, when we had too big to fail, the response was the banks bought a bunch of other banks and got bigger. And somehow that's okay. And so it tells you that it's not working. So regulation is adversarial and oftentimes is used as an anti-competitive tool to prevent people from entering a marketplace. And that's the biggest open secret, I think, of all of it. So we have to move beyond that. We have to get much more agile. Look at the state of Wyoming. They passed over 30 laws that are in the cryptocurrency space. And I wouldn't say they're pro-crypto, they're pro-crypto clarity. Mm-hmm. So you know where you stand, you know how to comply, and it's pretty easy. They created a new bank called the Speedy Bank, the special depository, which, by the way, solves the whole stablecoin issue of asset-backed stablecoins. And you have a great entrepreneur, Caitlin Long. She follows every rule. She's in full compliance, big auditor, all this stuff, and then goes to get a master account with the Federal Reserve. And they don't say yes, they don't say no, they just drag their feet for 20 months. And now she has to sue the government just to get what she's legally entitled to get as an entrepreneur. It's just bizarre that the government behaves in this way. And it's, again, because there's no accountability. In the private industry, if you do a bad job, your business goes out of business. In our industry, if you, in the government industry, sorry, you're snoring over there. In the government industry, if you do a bad job, you get a promotion. You might even end up as president one day, who knows? But anyway, that's besides the point.
Charles, thank you so much. Great talking to you.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Cheers.